The midday sun scorched the asphalt of Westbrook High School's courtyard. Students, scattered in small groups, talked loudly, laughed, and completely ignored the new kid walking alone, carrying a simple backpack and a watchful gaze. His name was Jamal Carter, and at that moment he was carrying something far heavier than books, the invisible weight of being different in a place where being different meant being judged. Jamal had barely taken 10 steps across the courtyard when the first snickers started. It was a low, mean sound that spread like an electric current. At first, he didn't turn around. His eyes were locked on the entrance of the main building, where he hoped to find refuge. But the mockery became impossible to ignore. "Hey, new kid!" shouted a loud, cutting voice. Jamal stopped. He took a deep breath, just like his mom had taught him. "Keep your head up," she used to say. "They only have power if you let them." But keeping his head up wasn't easy when 3 tall boys, wearing the school football team's jackets, started walking toward him with looks of pure disdain. Tyler Matthews led the trio. Son of the school's coach and the town's golden boy, Tyler was the embodiment of privilege wrapped in charm. Beside him were Blake and Ryan, his loyal followers, always ready to laugh at someone else's expense as long as it wasn't their own. "Lost your way back to the jungle, brother?" Tyler said, ripping laughter from his friends. Jamal kept his gaze steady, refusing to answer. His skin burned, not from the heat, but from the flush of shame and barely contained anger. He gripped the straps of his backpack tighter and tried to move forward. Tyler didn't let him. With a quick move, he stepped in front of Jamal, slamming his shoulder into him hard enough to make him stumble. "Say something, new kid. You can talk, right?" Heads turned. Students who had been busy with their own conversations now drifted closer, drawn to the scent of an impending fight like flies, to a carcass. Jamal stood alone at the center of an invisible arena. "Maybe he needs a little help," Blake sneered, stepping forward and knocking Jamal's books to the ground with a theatrical swipe. Papers scattered. Notebooks popped open, spilling Jamal's carefully organized life into the dust. Laughter echoed louder. Jamal bent down slowly, gathering his things without looking up. His hands trembled, but his face stayed calm. It was a skill he had perfected over the years, through different cities, different schools, where the color of his skin and the silence of his posture made him a target long before his voice could ever be heard. When he finished picking up his books, he stood tall. He looked Tyler straight in the eye and, with a quiet, unwavering voice, said, "I'm not here for trouble." The words, steady and firm, didn't calm Tyler. They only seemed to pour gasoline on his bruised ego. "Trouble? Man, you are the trouble," Tyler spat, laughing. "And you need to be put in your place." Before Jamal could take a step, Tyler shoved him again, harder this time. Jamal stumbled back, crashing into one of the courtyard's picnic tables. Students' backpacks tumbled to the ground, but no one moved to help. The sound of phones recording filled the air. For the crowd, it was just another show. For Jamal, it was the brutal reminder of how injustice so often became entertainment. Tyler stepped closer, smirking arrogantly, ready to deliver the final blow, a public humiliation that would stick to Jamal for a long, long time. But right then, Jamal let his backpack slide off his shoulder and onto the ground. Slowly. No rush. His expression changed. There was no fear anymore. No holding back. Only a silent decision, a promise he made to himself that today things would be different. For a split second, the courtyard seemed to hold its breath. And then, with tension crackling in the air like a storm about to break, the unexpected happened. What no one knew, not Tyler, not the eager crowd waiting for another fall, was that Jamal wasn't the fragile kid they thought he was. Inside him, a strength had been forged through years of discipline, pain, and resilience. And it would take just one move for everyone in that courtyard to finally see it. The tension hung in the air like a heavy storm cloud, ready to burst. Everyone in the Westbrook High School courtyard watched the scene unfold, as if trapped inside a glass frame. But before the inevitable could happen, the narrative rewound. As if time itself had decided to give the audience a chance to truly know the boy standing there, silent eyes locked, a quiet soul burning inside. Jamal Carter was born in a small town deep in Alabama, where being black still meant carrying the weight of generations of wary glances and closed doors. The son of Anthony Carter, an Army veteran turned history teacher, and Deborah Carter, a tireless nurse who saw hope in every act of kindness. Jamal grew up surrounded by unshakable principles, dignity, courage, and discipline. From an early age, his parents taught him that the world would often be unfair, but his response to that injustice would define who he truly was. "Strength, Jamal," his father would say, "isn't in your fists. It's in knowing when to use them and when not to." But fate, never content to remain a mere spectator, decided to test that strength far too soon. At just 9 years old, Jamal became the victim of a brutal attack by a group of older boys. Their only reason, the color of his skin. The attack left deep scars, some invisible. When his father found him lying bloodied in an alley, he didn't rush him straight to the hospital. First, he took him to a local martial arts gym run by a retired jiu-jitsu master who once trained soldiers. "You'll never be hunted like prey again," Anthony promised, tears brimming in his eyes. That was the beginning of Jamal's training. Years of relentless discipline, sleepless nights, mornings soaked in sweat and pain. But more important than the moves and techniques, he learned to master something far more powerful, his own spirit. Martial arts taught him balance, patience, and control. While other boys his age fought over popularity or status, Jamal was learning that true greatness was invisible, shaped in the silence of setbacks and the quiet pride of unseen victories. Wherever he went, Jamal carried that wisdom. But life wasn't content with testing him only on the mats. Every new city, every new school was a minefield of prejudice and exclusion. Constant moves, sideways glances, whispers behind his back, a cycle that seemed never-ending. When the opportunity to move to Westbrook came, Deborah embraced it like a promise of a new beginning. "A better school, a better neighborhood," she said with a hopeful smile. Ever obedient, Jamal agreed without protest. But deep down, he knew different places didn't always mean different people. Back in the Westbrook High courtyard, Jamal breathed deeply, feeling the invisible weight of his story settle across his shoulders. Tyler still smirked, sure of his superiority. The other students waited for the conclusion of another predictable show. The new kid, humiliated and crushed. But Jamal wasn't predictable, not anymore. His hand moved slowly, almost imperceptibly, brushing the backpack out of the way. His feet rooted firmly to the ground, the way a fighter knows every inch of his body. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in absolute focus. Inside him, memories of grueling training, falls, comebacks, and the echo of his master's voice filled his mind. A true fighter never fights out of hate. He fights out of necessity. Fight only when there's no other choice. Jamal didn't want violence, but at that moment he understood that resisting with dignity meant taking action. Around him, the murmurs grew louder. Blake and Ryan laughed, clueless about what was unfolding right before their eyes. Cell phones recorded every second, ready to capture another scene of humiliation. But in that instant, Jamal was no longer just the new kid. He was the sum of every battle he had ever fought. He was living proof that true strength is born in silence and blooms through adversity. Then, in a movement so slight it was almost unnoticeable, Jamal leaned forward. A small, almost casual gesture, but for those who could read the signs, it marked the beginning of something extraordinary. The next moment would change forever how Westbrook High School saw Jamal and how it saw itself. The sun still blazed mercilessly over Westbrook High School's courtyard, but the heat now felt secondary to the rising tension. The world around Jamal faded, every sound, every movement, every breath echoing in slow motion. Tyler Matthews, his arrogance fueled by the crowd, mistook Jamal's silence for surrender. His grin was that of someone who believed he was untouchable. But what he didn't know, what none of the spectators could foresee, was that Jamal's silence wasn't fear, it was the silence of a decision. "What's the matter, champ?" Tyler sneered, slapping the side of Jamal's head, not hard enough to hurt, but humiliating enough to trigger another wave of laughter. Blake and Ryan clapped, egging him on. Around them, cell phones wavered in the air, capturing every second. The atmosphere, thick with cruelty and anxiety, made Jamal's veins pulse, but his feet stayed planted, his breathing steady. Drunk on his own vanity, Tyler decided it wasn't enough. "Let's give our new friend a real Westbrook welcome, huh?" he shouted, drawing loud cheers from the crowd. He picked up a water bottle from the ground, popped it open with a theatrical flourish, and, with the cruel solemnity of someone who believed himself above all consequences, poured the entire contents over Jamal's head. The water ran slowly down Jamal's face, soaking the simple, clean clothes his mother had so carefully ironed that morning. The crowd erupted in howling laughter. Tyler tossed the empty bottle at Jamal's feet in open challenge. In that instant, the world seemed to freeze. Jamal closed his eyes. In his mind, flashes of all the times he had been forced to bow his head, to accept, to endure. He saw his mother's face, his father's proud eyes, and the words of his master echoed like a sacred chant. "Don't fight to destroy, fight to defend." When he opened his eyes again, something inside them had changed. The submissive Jamal, they thought they saw, vanished like mist under the burning sun. Without a word, he dropped his backpack to the ground. A strange, heavy silence fell over the courtyard. Tyler, still laughing, didn't realize what was about to unfold. "What? You gonna cry, new kid?" Tyler taunted, stepping closer, chest puffed out with arrogance. "You gonna run home to mommy?" Jamal didn't answer. In a swift, almost invisible move, he slid his left foot back, grounding himself in a stance that few would recognize. His eyes locked onto Tyler's center of gravity, and all the training, all the discipline, all the control that had shaped his childhood and teenage years aligned into a single, focused intent. This was the last straw. There was no more room for patience, no more room for silent humiliation. And although Jamal didn't seek violence, he understood, with absolute clarity, that some moments demanded you stand and fight. Time seemed to slow. Tyler lifted his arm, ready to shove him again, ready to seal Jamal's public humiliation, to make sure that day would be remembered as the day the new kid was put in his place. But Jamal wasn't on the same plane anymore. With one fluid, controlled motion, Jamal sidestepped the shove, seized Tyler's wrist with surgical precision, and used the bully's own momentum to spin him around. The move was fast, clean, undeniable. And then came the punch. It wasn't a wild, uncontrolled street brawl swing. It was a precise strike, landing squarely on the solar plexus, the place where strength shatters and the body betrays the will. The impact was sharp. Tyler collapsed to his knees, gasping, eyes wide with shock and pain. The entire courtyard fell silent. Phones dropped. Laughter died. For a long, breathless moment, the only sound was Tyler's ragged breathing. Jamal stood still. He didn't advance, didn't taunt, didn't gloat. His eyes, steady and calm, stared at the horizon, as if he knew this moment was about more than the fall of a single bully. It was about the fall of an entire silent system of prejudice and oppression. But the consequences of one act of courage are never simple. What would happen after that punch would change not just Jamal's fate, but the future of Westbrook High School, and maybe far beyond it. Tyler Matthews' body remained kneeling on the hot courtyard pavement, a monument to his own humiliation. What had once been an arena of mockery and laughter had turned into a theater of absolute awe. No sound escaped from the students' mouths. No one dared move, as if afraid to shatter the fragile veil of silence hanging over Westbrook High School. Jamal Carter stood before Tyler, showing no sign of triumph. His chest rose and fell slowly, controlling the adrenaline rushing through him like a river threatening to flood. The stance of his feet, the precise tilt of his shoulders, the calm of his hands resting openly by his sides. Everything about him conveyed a single, undeniable message. He was never the fragile target they imagined. For a few eternal seconds, no one dared come closer. Cell phone cameras were still raised, but now they weren't recording the humiliation they had expected. They were recording the end of a cycle many hadn't even realized existed. They were recording the moment the weak, the invisible, the other claimed his rightful place, without asking for permission. Finally, Blake, hesitantly, tried to help Tyler up. But Tyler, struggling to catch his breath, shoved him away with a shameful gesture. His eyes, once full of arrogance, now brimmed with fear and humiliation. The authority he once flaunted had evaporated like mist. The king of the courtyard had been dethroned, without shouting, insults, or brutality. All it had taken was one firm, precise, undeniable act. Principal Lewis, alerted by the whispers spreading rapidly through the school halls, rushed into the courtyard, followed by a few teachers. One look was all it took for him to realize something out of the ordinary had happened. "What's going on here?" his voice boomed, shattering the heavy silence. Most students, still stunned, said nothing. Others, fearing consequences, lowered their phones or slipped them into their pockets. Jamal remained where he was, still, dignified, showing no signs of defiance or regret. Principal Lewis, a burly, traditional man, glanced from Tyler to Jamal and, as expected, headed straight toward Jamal. "Come with me. Now," he ordered, his voice tense, trying to, reassert authority amid the obvious chaos. Jamal bowed his head respectfully and followed without a word. As he walked, he felt dozens of eyes glued to his back, some filled with silent disapproval, but others, fewer, yet more meaningful, with newfound admiration. As he passed through the courtyard, Jamal caught the eye of a young woman with light brown hair and an observant gaze. Her name was Emily Sanders, student council president and one of the few who had tried, however timidly, to fight against the school's culture of exclusion. Emily didn't smile. She didn't make any dramatic gesture. She simply nodded, a small, firm acknowledgement of the weight and courage of what had just happened. Inside the principal's office, the atmosphere was heavy. "So, Jamal Carter," Principal Lewis began, flipping quickly through Jamal's newly filed student record. "Seems we've got a problem on your very first day." Jamal stayed silent, waiting. The principal gave him a hard look. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for violence. You should have found a teacher. You should have walked away. Instead, you chose to attack another student." The words, thrown like darts, hit Jamal. But he didn't react. He knew that to many, acts of self-defense and acts of aggression looked the same, especially through the distorted lens of prejudice. "I want to hear your side," the principal added, though his posture made it clear he had already passed judgment. Jamal spoke then. His voice was calm, steady, sharp. He laid out, without exaggeration or omission, every provocation, every insult, every humiliation he endured. He described the books knocked to the ground, the water poured over his head, the crowd gathered to watch him fall. Principal Lewis listened in silence. He didn't interrupt, didn't question. When Jamal finished, the room felt even heavier. Before the principal could respond, the office door swung open. Emily Sanders entered, followed by a small group of students who, bravely, had brought their phones. "Principal Lewis," Emily said, her tone polite but carrying the weight of an undeniable truth. "We think you should see something before making any decisions." And then, on one of the phone screens, the footage played. Clear, indisputable footage showing Tyler initiating everything, showing Jamal trying to walk away, showing the push, the water, the cruel laughter, and finally, Jamal's restrained, precise, and justified response. Principal Lewis closed his eyes, for a brief moment, as if absorbing the full impact of what he was seeing. When he opened them, there was a new expression on his face, an uncomfortable blend of guilt and responsibility. Jamal remained silent, waiting for the verdict. He knew that, no matter what the principal said, something fundamental had already shifted. He was no longer just the new black kid trying to fit in. He was now a presence that demanded respect. But the truth being exposed wouldn't end the battle. On the contrary, it would bring to the surface deeper wounds within the school. Wounds that, until now, everyone had pretended didn't exist. And Jamal, whether he wanted to or not, was about to become the catalyst for a transformation many feared to face. The principal's office felt too small to contain the weight of the moment. The footage Emily and her classmates had shown didn't just expose the injustice done to Jamal. It revealed something much deeper, a silent culture of prejudice, impunity, and complacency. Principal Lewis, a man used to maintaining order without ever questioning its roots, found himself disarmed. The words he had prepared to reprimand Jamal evaporated. For the first time in years, he had to face the discomfort of an undeniable truth. The school he ran wasn't just a place for learning. It was also a place where prejudice roamed freely, hidden beneath the cloak of tradition. In the days that followed, the story spread throughout Westbrook High and beyond. The video went viral across the town's social media platforms, reaching not just parents, teachers, and students, but community leaders and local journalists. Heated debates flared up at PTA meetings, school board assemblies, and online forums. Some fiercely defended Jamal, praising his courage and composure. Others, uncomfortable, tried to downplay the incident, calling it just a misunderstanding between kids. But the truth captured on video was undeniable. Jamal, black, new, and isolated, had been the target of unprovoked humiliation, and only his emotional and physical preparation had kept it from becoming yet another silent tragedy, buried by indifference. Inside the school, change began to take root. Under mounting pressure from parents and the community, Principal Lewis announced the launch of a mandatory diversity and inclusion program for all students and staff. Workshops would be led by outside experts and would cover topics like structural racism, empathy, and human rights. Tyler Matthews was suspended for an extended period, and he was stripped of his position as football team captain. His fall wasn't something Jamal celebrated. To him, justice wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition and transformation. As for Jamal, he was invited to join a new student council tasked with addressing issues of equality within the school. At first, he hesitated. He had never sought to be a symbol, let alone a leader. But when he thought about his mother's face, his father's proud eyes, and all those who never had the chance to defend themselves, he accepted. Little by little, Jamal was no longer seen just as the new kid. He became a symbol of quiet strength and unshakable dignity. One afternoon, as he walked across the courtyard, the same courtyard where he had once been humiliated and then respected, Jamal paused and looked around. There were still wary glances, of course. Real change takes time. But there were also looks of genuine respect, admiration, and something even more precious: hope. Emily approached, offering a small, knowing smile. "You know," she said, "sometimes it just takes one person to break the silence." Jamal glanced around and nodded, feeling for the first time since arriving in that town that maybe, just maybe, he had found a place where he could stay. Or at least fight so others could. What happened at Westbrook High was more than just the story of a punch and a fall. It was the story of how quiet courage can shake entire systems. It was living proof that it's not the volume of a voice that changes the world. It's the weight of the truth it carries. Injustice survives where silence is louder than outrage. But sometimes, all it takes is a single voice, a single act of resistance to spark a revolution. Never underestimate those who stand in silence. Within them may lie the strength to change everything.